Okay, this is my first YouTube channel. Take one.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I've got a very special guest with me today. This is Alexis. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I would love to introduce myself. My name is Alexis Teichmiller, and I am 24. I work with Charlie at ConvertKit, but I also do a lot of things on the side, a wide array of things on the side. I have a podcast called The Laptop Lifestyle, where I introduce and interview millennial entrepreneurs, people who are really just living a virtual life, and anybody that's building community or making an income from their laptop. Those are the kind of people that I have on the podcast.
Yeah.
And then I also work and collaborate with a lot of brands to create brand content. So I started out as a fashion blogger. That kind of came out of owning my own clothing company for a few years. And then after fashion blogging for a bit, I got more into lifestyle, and then I got more into travel, and that's kind of where the brand partnership started. And now I partner with hotels and tourism boards and create content for them.
And she's got an amazing Instagram. Like, it's beautiful. We'll link it down below. And we're going to record a podcast episode together for her show. So that will be linked as well. I wanted to bring you on today, Alexis, just to talk about like being a young person, being an entrepreneur, doing stuff online.
Yeah.
We've been talking a lot recently, because I've been staying in Nashville with Alexis. That's where we are right now. We've been talking about the sense that we feel of having to achieve things at a young age, right? Like, I feel like there's a lot of pressure on young people to be on that 30 under 30 list and, you know, achieve a lot while you're young, because it's not so impressive for some reason when it's later on in life. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think in general, you know, I'm 24 and been out of college now for 2 years, and there's this pressure to achieve things at a young age because, like you said, it seems to be more impressive, but also it seems to be like the sexy thing to do for millennials. Is to start a company or to have a large, you know, YouTube or Instagram following and build like this solopreneurship business on your own, which I 100% support, and that's what the podcast is all about. But there's also this divide I've found where if you aren't doing something creative, or if you aren't, you know, all in and ambitious on every aspect of your life, it somehow makes you feel like a failure.
Or even if you are in on it, but you're not achieving as much as other people.
Right.
You know?
Or growing as fast, or making as much money. I think, and this is something that we've always struggled with, I think, just in humanity, but is comparison. And I think this really is derived from comparing your journey to someone else's journey. Because where you are right now is not where I am or Charlie is. I mean, you're on your own path. And I think in general, I think that things like social media, as much as I love them and use them every day, they have set this standard for achievement in a different way than before. It's really just taken a micro, like I would say a, what am I trying to say here? A microscope? Right. Yeah. Things like social media have taken a microscope, I think, to people's lives in a way that is really just inclusive and just really like zooms in and focused on what people are doing and their achievements, which can, in comparison to someone who's not, you know, doesn't have a podcast or isn't trying to start their own business, it can make them feel like they're not achieving things at the rate that everyone else is.
Do you have any, I don't know, how do you stop yourself comparing? Because this is definitely something that I struggle with, not only in this whole idea of like being on YouTube, being online, but as a designer, and a lot of my audience is designers too. It's really hard not to compare your work to others and to compare like the opportunities that other people are getting compared to you, the clients that they're landing. How do you deal with that?
I think, I mean, I really used to struggle with this a lot, especially when I first started getting into Instagram and sharing a lot more of my life online. If you take one look at my Instagram, you'll probably know that I focus a lot on vulnerability, and I share a lot of my life and my struggles. Thanks. And it took me a while to get to that level of depth, because I saw people growing quicker than me or getting bigger brand deals, and I just kept looking at people through my little scrolling addiction and seeing what they were doing and then comparing my life to them. And then I realized that I wasn't in a place where I could actually be happy for them. I couldn't celebrate their successes because I wanted that for myself. And so I challenged myself to unfollow people and to just completely take myself out of that type of mindset and out of that equation. Because if I'm not in a place to celebrate someone, I don't want to be like following them or looking at them. Or if I'm feeling jealousy or envy, I just unfollow, because I think the internet is a place and a source that should inspire and should really motivate people to create and to connect and build community. It should not be used as a source of jealousy or comparison. Even though it is.
Energy.
Just negative energy. Even though it is. But that's a choice. And that's a choice that you have to make. And you can't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. You don't know the steps that person took in their journey. Some people, get places really quickly. And maybe you are supposed to learn something in the journey. And I think that's something I'm learning in battling with comparison, is falling in love with the journey and falling in love with the process and not necessarily the destination. Because, we've both done some pretty cool things. Yeah. We have. We really have. We've accomplished some really awesome things, and we've had really incredible opportunities to share our work. But in that, though, isn't there still like a feeling of, I'm not there yet?
Oh, totally.
I haven't arrived.
I never feel like I've done enough yet. Mm-hmm. And you compare yourself, like subconsciously, I guess, to people who are around your age or like in similar life situation to you, and you're like, well, why am I not there yet? Like, why don't I own a house when it feels like everyone's buying a house now? Right. That sort of thing.
Or why aren't I married? Or I should start having children, or I should settle down, or I can't move to a new city because I'm supposed to be, settling down in this late 20s, like whatever that looks like. And I think it's really just focusing on your journey, and your mission in life does not have to be someone else's. Yeah. That's really hard. And I think where that starts is knowing yourself. Like, you really need to have self-awareness and understand your strengths and your weaknesses, and know really what makes you you and what motivates you, because what motivates you doesn't motivate other people. Yeah. What lights your soul on fire maybe doesn't speak to someone else. So when you're able to really get to know who you are, things like comparison and jealousy and looking at what everyone else is doing and keeping up with the Joneses, it's not really an issue anymore.
It gets easier to deal with.
It gets easier to deal with.
Because you can compartmentalize it, right? And be like, that's that person and this is me. Yeah. I like what you said about seeing the end point and not the journey. Mm-hmm. I feel like this is a problem that often happens when people are learning design, and I think it applies to other things as well, that you try and copy the end product, right? So you're like, oh, this website looks like this, I'm going to try and make it look like that, without going through the process of understanding the user experience, etc., to get there. And I feel like that can apply to like life in general as well. Right. Like, you're looking at someone's end product on Instagram or whatever, and like where they've ended up, and you're not seeing the hardships and the journey and the self-awareness that it took to get them there. Yeah. It's something that I like to call the path of should. Ooh. And the path of should. Trademark. Yeah. It's basically where there's this path that I think society puts us on, no matter what culture you're in, no matter if you're an entrepreneur or a designer or anything. There's this path that sometimes we get shoved into. Right. And it's this path of should. I should do this. I should go to university. I should get married. I should have 3 kids. I should buy a house. I should wait 10 years before I start my business. I'm too young. I'm too old. There's that should path. Definitely. And I think when you focus on that, you'll never create your best work ever. You will always be emulating or copying or doing what everybody else thinks you should do, instead of actually knowing yourself enough to know what's right for you. And that takes heart work, some soul work. And it's not fun. It's not easy sometimes to be real with yourself of, this is what I'm capable of, or maybe this timeline isn't quite what I should do. Maybe it's just what I think people want me to do. So that's something you have to dig and do the work to really have those realizations. How do you get to know yourself? If you wanted to share a couple of pieces of advice for anyone watching who feels like maybe they're on this path of should, and they want to figure out what actually they want for themselves. Step 1, spend more time with yourself. Okay. I challenge you to look in the mirror and count backwards to 10. Ooh. And if you can't be with yourself for 10 seconds and it makes you feel uncomfortable, you need to do some work, because you're going to be with yourself for the rest of your life. It's just how that works. Yeah. And so you got to get to the point where you like you. Yeah. For all the things that make you you, the good and the bad. And so step 1 would be spending more time with yourself. Step 2 would be asking the people that are closest to you some ways that you could get better. And this is hard. This is a little vulnerable and sometimes scary. And ask people that you trust
But what I did is I kind of sought out people that I really trusted and really respected, and I asked them ways that, like, okay, what do you see for me? Like, what do you see for my life? What do you see me achieving? And hearing, like, their feedback on who, like, the kind of person that they saw me being whenever I was 30, or here are some of the things I see you creating. From their perspective, I mean, honestly, it was a gift, because sometimes you don't think about yourself like that.
Yeah.
You know, and so opening up the door for that really positive motivation. And then that was the first question, was what are a few things that you think I could achieve? What are some things that you see me doing in the next 5-10 years? And then the second question was, what are some things that you think are going to keep me from being that person? So what are a few things that you think maybe I need to work on, or maybe some insecurities that you've noticed? Because a lot of the times we know our own insecurities, but we don't know what we're projecting into the world.
Yeah.
And that, again, all of this comes back to that path of should. Like, whenever you're able to get really comfortable with yourself and you know what you're capable of, and especially that inspiration of what other people think you're capable of, it makes that path of should that much easier to ditch.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm gonna go do my own thing.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want anyone watching who's feeling, I don't know, that they're young and they're not achieving enough, like, there's no rush, right? Like, don't rush through life and think too much about the end point so that you're not enjoying the journey.
Right.
Because the journey is life.
Right.
Like,
and it should be lived, and
Yeah.
it should be experienced and really taken in. And I was listening to a podcast by, if you guys have ever heard of Lewis Howes, he has a podcast called
She loves him. Yeah.
I love Lewis Howes. He has a podcast called The School of Greatness. And I was listening to an interview that he did with Wilmer. I'm kind of blanking on his last name, but he played Fez in that 70s show.
Yep.
And he did this whole interview with him on the journey that he took as an actor, and I promise it's going to circle around. But Wilmer was talking about how he was doing so much at a young age and achieving so much, and Johnny Depp reached out to him and invited him to come to his trailer for some film that he was creating at that point in time. And so Wilmer was like, Johnny Depp wants to talk to me? So went into his trailer, and Johnny was just asking him a few questions, and he gets to this point where he looks at Wilmer and he says, what kind of creator do you want to be? Are you going to be able to sustain the life that you're living right now in order to be that same creator in 10 years? And, like, that was such a mind, but I was sitting in my car and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm writing this down. Because the life that we're creating right now, it needs to also be sustainable.
Yep.
And I think that path of should, or that rush that you feel as a creative or as a designer or entrepreneur, you feel like you need to accomplish everything right now, either in order to prove yourself or to prove your work, to prove your worth. And really, you need to focus on taking all the things you're trying to do right now and make them sustainable over time.
Yeah, because if you don't enjoy the journey, are you really going to enjoy the destination?
Exactly.
That you're going to arrive at?
Yeah. And making sure that you're setting yourself up for a long-term success, not just thinking about what can I do in the next 6 months to move the needle.
Yeah.
It's more like, what habits can I create right now to make sure that I'm taking care of myself, that I'm doing my best work, that I'm working with people that really inspire me, like you, but really making sure that you're doing those things and those steps to actually create a sustainable life, not a life that you're trying to shove everything into right now.
Yeah, into a compressed time frame.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alexis. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video and this little chat. If you want more like this, definitely go check out Alexis' podcast, because, I mean, I love how you can get vulnerable online and talk about all this deep stuff. She's a great person to have a conversation with.
Thanks, girl.
Give this video a thumbs up if you did enjoy it, and check out the links down below in the description. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Lovely. Cool.